Hey guys, Brad Gilmore here. Want to give a big shout out to our title sponsor, Walker Texas Lawyer. If you or a loved one have been injured in an accident, whether that be a car, truck, motorcycle accident, or some kind of other issue, hit up Walker Texas Lawyer at 713-552-1117 or walkertexaslawyer.com.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
Broadcasting live from Houston, Texas, and around the world. TV host, best-selling author, and radio personality Brad Gilmore brings you a collection of conversations with stars from movies.
Matthew McConaughey.
Brad Gilmore.
Mark Wahlberg.
Hey, how are you?
The legendary Mr. Christopher Lloyd. Christopher, how are we doing?
Well, I'm doing good. Great introduction.
Jessica Alba and Lizzie Mathers. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Kevin Costner joins us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Television.
Jimmy Fallon joins us this morning. Jimmy, how you doing, my friend?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. I appreciate this, bud.
Kelly Ripa.
Brad, thank you for having me.
Comedy.
Jay Leno joins us. Jay, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, what's going on?
Chris Tucker is in the building. Chris Tucker, good morning to you.
Hey, Brad. Good morning to you. How are you?
George Lopez joins us right now. George, how are you doing, sir?
Good morning.
Music.
Lola Monroe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The legendary frontman of AC/DC, Brian Johnson, joins us right now. Brian, how you doing?
Good morning, Brad. What looking to talk, you me funny lad.
Megan Trainor.
Thank you so much, Brad. You're awesome.
Chloe Bailey joins us. I appreciate the time.
Appreciate you.
And more. This is The Collection. Now your host, The Boat.
Join me right now on ESPN 975, 92.5 to talk the hit series Fight Night, the $1 Million Heist. All 8 episodes are streaming right now on Peacock. He's the producer of the series and one of the great Hollywood and Atlanta story facilitators, producer extraordinaire Will Packer. Will, thanks for taking the time and welcome to the show.
Brad, I like that intro, brother. I'll be that. I will own that introduction. I'm excited. Because Fight Night is out there, all 8 episodes. You know, a lot of people tell me, I want to wait till I can binge the whole thing. Well, guess what? It's time. It's out there. Fight Night, the $1 Million Heist is there. You can binge the whole thing on Peacock. I'm proud of this one, Brad.
Man, you should be. You made a great story. I mean, look, this has everything that I love, right? It has sports. It has a heist, the heist element of it. It's a period piece taking us back to a time where we weren't before. You got to be proud of it now that art's out there and that people can absorb it all at one time. What's the feedback been for you? And has it been validating for you?
Man, it has been so validating. Look, it's hard to do these period pieces and do them right. You got to be really authentic with everything, from the costumes to the wardrobe to the locations, all that. You are right. It is something that encompasses some of the best elements of TV that I personally like to watch. It's got the sports element, right? Obviously, Muhammad Ali, we know him as this iconic legend. But the reality is that back in the early 70s, he was a polarizing figure. You had half the country that said that he was, a draft dodger that turned his back on his country because he refused to fight in Vietnam, right? As a conscientious objector. And the reality is that made him persona non grata in the boxing world. He was blackballed. Nobody would hire Muhammad Ali, would bring in and sanction a fight with Muhammad Ali. So in Georgia, you had these promoters working with the government, the politicians at the time, the local government, to put on this unsanctioned Ali boxing match. So it's already off the books. Then you had this off the books after party, which was this underground casino night. This all attracted celebrities, athletes, and gangsters from all over the country. They come in and rob the place. Right? It's still to this day is one of the biggest heists in the history of Georgia. It's a crazy story. And the heist is just the beginning. That's our jumping off part for this series. So it's cool, man. The feedback has been amazing. People have been really enjoying the show. And as a creator, when you work very hard, that's all you want, man. That's what you live for.
Well, and you're absolutely right. You're creative and you've been a part of bringing so many great stories to the big screen, to the streaming screen, and all in between. When I talk to people and we talk about the industry or things like that, they always talk about, what does a producer do? And my best description is they're a story facilitator. That's why I put it in your introduction there, because without a producer, man, they don't understand how many things you got to jump through and hoops you got to jump through getting the rights, getting the cast together. And then when we talk about a period piece, my question for you too is, you got to, I'm sure, keep the eye on the budget when you want to put a period piece together, because you're right, you got the costumes and the wardrobe, and we see that with the hairstyles in the 70s, but you also have to have the cars and the vibe has to be right. Is that something you got to keep a watchful eye on, as on your pocketbook when you're doing a period piece?
No question, because that is where so much of your resources goes. And as a producer, literally, people will ask, like, what is it that a producer does? I am, you said it right, a facilitator. I'm like a big project manager. So not only is it my job to get the resources for a project like this, and it's not cheap. It's not an inexpensive project to put this together. 8 parts set in the 70s with these big old stars. My job is to get the resources and then go out and get the Sam Jacksons, Don Cheadles, Kevin Harts of the world to participate in it, and then make sure that we're using our resources in a responsible, efficient way to make sure that you see the resources and the money that's spent on the screen. So you're going to see it when you see this, and you see the action set pieces, and you see the 70s milieu that we put together, the environment, the vibe that we create with this. The other thing, Brad, is that it's like it's an homage to a bygone era. When you watch this, it's got a vibe of the movies that were made in the 70s that were cool and hip. Everything from the music to the cinematic approach is all about bringing the audience into this era.
And you do it flawlessly. I mean, there's not a time where you question where you are. You're in the 1970s and you feel it. And I got to tell you, the cast, a lot's been made of it, and as it should be. Not only is the cast big names, but the cast is so talented. We talk about Kevin and Terrence and Sam Jackson and Don Cheadle and Taraji, but also the young cast that you have here. The two people who stick out in particular for me are Chloe Bailey, who's also an Atlanta native, and then someone who I had on the show after I saw him in Nanny, I thought he was phenomenal, which is Sinqua Walls. And to me, as a producer, you got to have your eye on the next generation of talent as well. And I think that y'all did that great, especially those two, to me, stood out.
I appreciate that. I'm proud of this cast because I know that I had to make those personal calls to get a cast on this level together. But you brought up a good point. It's not just the big names that it's also what I like to call the young gunners, that next generation of actors that are coming for that top spot. And so these are some names that you may not know immediately, but people like Sinqua Walls and Chloe Bailey and Miles Bullock and Lori Harvey. And these are folks that you're going to be hearing a lot of. When you watch this show, you're going to see not just the legends that but some new faces that are bringing the heat. I promise you. There was some really top tier competitive scene stealing going on when we shot this. It was competitive on set because you had the old guard that didn't want the young guard to think that they were going to just come in and show them up. So it ultimately is a fun viewing experience. Some of that stuff you see on the screen, it's real. Some of the not tension, but the antagonistic elements that you see, some of that stuff is real because these actors were going at each other and giving as good as they got.
Well, and you know what? It's interesting you say that because one of the things I heard you talk about in regard to this project, but really a lot of projects, is your favorite kind of story is I think you said it was a super complicated narrative where the characters have shades of gray, and those are your favorite stories to tell. So can you expound upon that? Why do you kind of love that element so much?
Yeah, well, I like it when it's not just black and white. Our world is not black and white. In this show, you've got protagonists, right? Typically your hero characters that you're rooting for that are very, very flawed, man. You've got the guys that are supposedly on the right side of the law, of history, of doing the right thing that are super flawed. And then you've got antagonists, your typical bad guys, who you're rooting for in this. To me, that's the most fun. When it's like, I don't know who to root for, but I'm having fun just watching. And that's what happened. You've got this Sam Jackson character who's the Black Godfather. He is an incredibly dangerous gangster with a super shady past, and he doesn't take anything from anyone. And he's one of the people that gets robbed, and he goes on a murderous rampage in this show. He does. But when you get to know this character, you see underneath it, there is a reason that he thinks that he can be so much more than what he's perceived to be if he was just given the opportunity against a system that he feels like is set against him. That's one of those complex antagonists that I'm talking about. So to me, that is just, it's the most provocative way to shape a narrative. And that's part of my job as a producer, to make things interesting. The audience has got so many choices out there of what they want to watch. I want to put something out there that feels complex and provocative, where you don't necessarily know exactly where the story is going to go and exactly who the characters are until you really get invested.
Well, and you know what? That's what's great about Fight Night, is also the way that the narrative unfolds. You really don't know where it's going to turn and at what point, which is a really great element. Now, let me ask you this. I have time for one more. So I'm a Houston native, born and bred. I love this. I love my city like no other.
H-Town, stand up.
Yes, sir. So, and when I see a story about Houston being told on the big screen or the small screen, I look at it a different way. I want to make sure that they pay tribute to the city in the right ways. You being in Atlanta being home, and so many stories of yours, whether it be Fight Night or even going back to Stomp the Yard, which, by the way, was the first movie I can remember being a conversation in school lunchrooms when I was in school. That was like the first movie I remember people talking about was Stomp the Yard. But anyway, going back to the point, do you feel a sense of responsibility to really do Atlanta justice, being an Atlanta representative?
Dude, or I can't go home, or I can't, that's the city. That's my city, man. I gotta do right by the ATL. And that is something, it's a love letter to Atlanta, and it is a story that is telling so much about this city when it was going through a major inflection point. Atlanta was not a city that was taken seriously on the level of a New York or Miami or LA back in the early 70s. It was a, smaller city. It was in the South. People considered it country and not a big economic driver, but it was a city of dreamers, man. It was a city of folks that felt like Atlanta could be so much more. So I absolutely had to do justice by the city, by the place that I love so much, that's given so much to me. And I think that when you see it, whether you live in Atlanta or not, you will see the care and attention that is paid to telling the story of the city. Atlanta is a character in Fight Night.
Man, it sure is. Well, Will, I really appreciate you joining us. All episodes of Fight Night, the $1 Million Heist, are on Peacock right now. Will Packer, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for having me, bro. Thanks for everybody for checking out the show.
Have a good one, brother.
All right, bro. Thank you.